Hello and welcome to another Star Wars: The Old Republic video. In this video I'm going to be talking about the cumulative updates on how you gear up in 7.2. Okay, quick note from the editor here, this video ended up being really long because it is kind of a comprehensive guide for players who have never encountered the gearing system before and want a guide from start to finish. So make sure you use those timestamps liberally to just find the information you need. If you're an existing player who already has some information on this, probably only need to watch about 4 minutes of this video in total, maybe 6 minutes. Back to the main video. We are going to be looking at this mostly from the point of view of a player who has just reached level 80 for the first time in this expansion and this game update, but we'll also have some tips and tricks for players who are currently working on the gearing system from before 7.2 launched. I have a few other guides and videos that might be useful for you to check out as well. There is going to be a general gearing guide, part 1 and part 2, that tells you about the stat thresholds you need to hit and other useful information. I've got my Vendors of SWTOR video. Just go check that out, it's pretty cool. It's got a lot of useful vendors to buy gear and different things. Also, I'm going to be making some future guides that are going to go over different level caps, such as level 65, level 70, level 75, so on, so that if you're a preferred or free-to-play player, you can actually still level up your gear at different levels and get the best gear available for your level. So without further ado, let's get back into this main video, how to gear up in 7.2, the easiest, fastest way with the least amount of work. Alright, so I've got this gearing graphic up over here. It goes over the different variety of gear that we can get. What you need to generally know about how gear works in this current expansion is they have different types of gear depending on the content you're playing, and they're not really easy to mix and match, even though they are a lot of similarities between them. So what do we have? We have our conquest type gear on the far left side of the chart, and that's going to be your simple green gear. We're going to have our flashpoint gear, which is the next category. It can come in a couple different varieties depending on the content you're playing. We've got our operations gear, again a variety of ways to get operations gear in a variety of different qualities. And then we've got our PvP gear, which is kind of its own unique little stream that kind of sits on its own. And we've also got the R4 gear on here as well, so that's the newest operation. It's got its own special gearing system. And then we've got mod gear as well that's available to us. A lot of players are used to moddable gear in this game, and they did finally bring it back. Alright, what is Conquest gear? How do we obtain it? So on. So Conquest gear is your most basic gear. It's intended for players who aren't going to be doing flashpoints or any kind of group content. And it's green, it's not as strong as the other gear, but it's still sufficient, it's still good enough to do all the stuff that you want to enjoy doing. If we head over to the supply section of fleet and we go to the very first room here, or if you're on the Imperial fleet, it would be the top room on the left side there, we're going to find a Conquest gear vendor as well as a Conquest gear upgrade vendor. So you can buy all of your Conquest gear on this vendor, and it only takes Conquest accommodations and some credits. Purchase your piece of Conquest gear, it will show up on the Conquest gear upgrade vendor where you can upgrade it for some Conquest accommodations, daily resource matrix, and some credits. Alright, now let's look at the next category, Flashpoint gear. You can get Flashpoint gear from doing either Veteran Mode Flashpoints or Master Mode Flashpoints. On Veteran Mode Flashpoints, you're going to get green gear, which is similar to the Conquest gear, and you can also get blue accessories, which is going to be a better upgraded version of the gear. Master Mode Flashpoints, all of the gear will be blue gear, which is going to be upgraded, better stats than your Conquest gear. It is very expensive to upgrade Flashpoint gear and to obtain the currency, just keep that in mind for later. If we look at the next vendors on the fleet here, you're going to see the Flashpoint gear vendor, where if you want, you can purchase your Flashpoint gear at item rating 324. It comes in green and blue quality. And the vendor next to it is going to be our upgrade vendor, where we can use the special FP-1 stabilizer currency mixed with our Conquest combinations and our daily resource matrix to be able to upgrade that gear even further. Now, you can obtain Flashpoint gear either from buying off the vendor, from killing bosses in flashpoints, or opening the crate that comes from the weekly mission for flashpoints. Now you can upgrade your gear by either using the Flashpoint gear upgrade vendor or using those reward crates that I was talking about from the weekly mission. Okay, moving on to the next category of gear, Operations gear. Operations gear does come in green, blue, and purple qualities. And so the green is still going to be the same quality and same stuff as your Conquest and your Flashpoint gear that's green. The blue is going to be the same as the Flashpoint gear that's blue. And the purple gear is going to be even more powerful gear. In the same room here, if we go a little bit further over, you're going to find the Operations gear vendor where you can purchase all of the starter Operations gear. If we slide one vendor over, we're going to find the Operations gear upgrade vendor. It's important to note that Operations gear comes with its own special currency called the OP-1 Catalyst, And similar to the Flashpoint gear, upgrading is going to take those conquest accommodations, daily resource matrix, and the special OP-1 currency. Our fourth path of gear is going to be the PvP gear. So if you want to just be playing PvP and you don't care about getting the PvE gear, this is a great option here. You can completely self-contained path to get all of your PvP gear needs met. In the combat section of fleet here, bottom left for your Republic fleet and top right for your Imperial fleet, you're going to find the PvP gear vendor. On this vendor, using the special WZ-1 accelerant currency that comes from PvP, you can buy yourself a starter set of 322 gear, which you can then slide on over to the PvP gear upgrade vendor to be able to upgrade that at a cost of conquest combinations, daily resource matrix, and WZ-1 currency. Have you noticed a trend here? The two generic currencies are used for upgrading everything, and there's a special third currency added for doing the other gearing pass. Now, when it comes to actually obtaining these currencies for PvP, you get the majority of them from doing the weekly missions for war zones or arenas, as well as you'll be getting that upgrade cash that allows you to upgrade your items. There isn't too much else I need to tell you about the PvP gear path, as the majority of it is self-contained in its own path and kind of takes care of gearing itself. So the gear we discussed so far is considered PvE, player versus environment gear, or PvP gear. So all of the previous stuff that wasn't the PvP gear will be considered your player versus environment gear. All of this gear starts at a minimum item rating of 324 and has a maximum item rating of 336. PvP gear, though, has a minimum item rating of 322, which is one step lower, and it has a maximum item rating of 332, which is 2 steps lower. Now, technically the game is supposed to make it so that you don't get an advantage for wearing gear higher than 332 when you do PvP matches. So if we take a look at our character sheet here, you'll see that it's broken down into 3 categories of items that you wear. You have your weapons, your armor, and your accessories. Our weapons are moddable, so they can either be the fixed stat gear that we get from the areas we've just discussed, or they can be moddable gear that you're able to put item modifications in. Armor, same idea. These can be the fixed stat gear that we get from the previously discussed areas, or they can be moddable gear that you put item modifications in. Then we have our accessories. Our accessories are not moddable, they just come with fixed stats. It's important to note that in certain content, when I say that you can get 2 different quality types, it's the accessories that can drop as a higher quality type than the rest of the gear. So if we go back to looking at our gearing graphic here, you'll see that on some of the things such as veteran mode flashpoints and our veteran mode operations, there's a second kind of bar of color there. That means that you're able to get that upgraded quality type on the accessories. Okay, let's talk about the final area on this chart before we go into more details on the moddable gear. This is going to be the new operation, R4 Anomaly operation, and it uses a different kind of gearing system that's kind of self-contained on its own, but we can still use it for some of our other general gearing stuff. So when you do story mode R4, you're going to get a story mode R4 token from each time you kill a boss, and this will give you blue gear when you trade it in at the vendor. And when you do veteran mode R4, you're going to get 2 types of tokens potentially. The first one is everyone gets a veteran mode token from every single boss kill they get, and then a player in the group will also get a boss token from that boss as well. Back in our supply section of fleet where all the other gear vendors are, we can see the token exchange for R4 Anomaly Story, where you'll be able to cash in your story mode gear for a piece of 328 item rating gear that's blue. Sliding on over to the next vendor, the R4 Anomaly Veteran vendor, you're going to be able to use your generic tokens to be able to get gear starting at item rating 322 that you can use tokens to upgrade all the way to item rating 340. And additionally, there's the purple artifact quality gear from the boss token that will instantly give you a piece of 340 gear of artifact quality. This is the best gear in the game, but it is much harder to get, as defeating all of the different bosses in the R4 Anomaly on veteran mode is quite challenging. Another important place that you want to pay attention to in this room on the supply section of fleet is Londar Edwin. Once you reach level 80, he will give you a quest that will unlock your legendary implants. So as soon as you hit level 80, make sure you're heading over and talking to Londar Edwin to begin this quest. You'll then charge up a neuro key, and once you unlock that neuro key, it will open up this vendor called Snark where you can buy your legendary implants. So these are now the set bonuses in 7.0, and they, instead of being attached to our armor slots, they're being attached to our 2 implants. These only go up to a maximum item rating of 334, but they start at item rating 326. When you're first getting your legendaries, they will cost 6,500 tech fragments each, in addition to some conquest combinations, daily resource matrix, and a few credits. Once you have gotten a single character to wear 2 legendaries that are item rating 330 or higher each, you will unlock an achievement that allows you to buy all of your legendary implants from item rating 326 to item rating 330 for a reduced cost of 2,500 tech frags. So it's really important, make sure you only have one character get their 2 legendary implants up to 330 before you start buying any for any of your other characters, as it significantly reduces the tech frag cost. There's also an additional quest that when you get both of these legendary implants to 334 on the same character, then you can go 332 and 334 for that cheaper cost. The last piece of unique gear that we want to talk about is the tactical item. So if we exit this room and we go over one room to the right, which I call the Spoils of War vendor room, you're going to find a vendor that will sell you tacticals. And on here, tacticals, they cost 3,000 tech fragments and 1,000,000 credits. They also give you a special ability or bonus that makes your character more powerful. These are exceptionally good for the majority of classes, and most classes will want to pick up a tactical before they worry about picking up their legendary implants, because you don't have to upgrade them. You just buy one and it's good for the rest of your gear progress. Okay, now that we've covered where all the different types of gear are, the places that you can obtain them, what type of endgame gearing there is in the game, the different currencies that you need to go through those, let's talk about obtaining your first set of gear and upgrading it from scratch. So if you've been at level 80 for a while and you already have some gear and some currency, you can skip this first part and you can skip ahead to the next section. If you've just hit level 80 and you don't have any of your gear yet, your first step is to start the quest for the legendary implant vendor, as we mentioned before, and obtaining 200 conquest commendations. You are going to obtain your conquest commendations by completing your personal conquest when one of the rewards says 200 conquest commendations. So pretty easy. You make sure that your conquest tab here, one of your rewards says conquest commendations, and then you just complete your personal conquest. Note, I have a stronghold bonus of 150%, which makes it much easier and faster to obtain personal conquest. You get this by purchasing and unlocking rooms in your strongholds until this reaches 150%. Approximately 6 strongholds fully unlocked. So now that we have ourselves our 200 conquest combinations, we're going to need a little bit less than 300,000 credits. We're going to go over to our conquest gear vendor on the fleet here, and we're going to buy our first set of gear. 200 conquest combination buys you an entire set of 324 gear off the vendor. Woo!
I'm Sith.
Someone's been filling your head with garbage.
Okay, let's exit this room and we'll go 2 rooms over to find the vendors who are going to do our moddable gear, as this will be crucial to reducing the grind on our gearing path. So I'm now in the middle room of the supply section of fleet on the outer ring, and you'll see 2 vendors here. One is called Hyde, one is called Zeke. Zeke is the one that's going to actually have the items for you, but you haven't done anything yet to be able to buy items off of Zeke. So first we'll have to talk to Hyde. So if you're a player who already has some gearing currency and you can potentially upgrade a piece of gear higher than item rating 330, you can actually pick a higher quest than 330. But for everybody else, make sure that you look for the 330 prototype modification quest. You want to pick this up. You also can pick up at the same time the 336 prototype modification quest further down on the list if you scroll. You can also pick up the artifact quest at 336 if you can do operations, but we can also worry about grabbing that quest later. The reason why we want to start with a 330 prototype modification quest is so that we get a nice boost to our gear and become more powerful throughout this process of grinding up to the 336 gear. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and picked up our Hyde and Zeke quest, we want to look at obtaining our first piece of prototype gear that we'll be able to get to 330 to complete this quest. There are 3 sources of prototype gear that we can use for this quest, which are the R4 tokens, veteran mode operations, and flashpoint gear. I'll discuss the order from easiest to hardest to obtain. R4 Anomaly Story Mode. This is going to be the fastest way if you can find a group to join. Now, you don't want to be doing a group that's going to do a full run unless you know they can carry you, such as a guild team, but you can definitely join a group that says they're only going to kill the first 3 bosses, as your gear will be good enough to do that. Each boss will give you a token, so you'll have at least 2 tokens, if not 3 tokens, which will allow you to immediately purchase a 328 prototype gear and upgrade it to 330 prototype. You can now skip to the part about completing the quest for 330. Veteran mode operations. Eternity Vault is very easy for groups to complete, and Kraga's Palace is usually easy enough for groups to complete as well, so you can look into joining either one of these. Also, check for the weekly mission in addition so that you can gain additional OP1 catalysts and this Kalamite upgrade cache. Each boss killed will drop a piece of gear, prototype if it is a weapon or armor, and if you get an accessory it'll be artifact, but at some point you will get prototype. The third place that we can get our initial piece of prototype gear would be veteran mode flashpoints. This is not a guaranteed, as you need to get an accessory for it to be prototype or blue quality, but it is much more accessible to all players and easier to solo or to find a group for. Master mode flashpoints, all gear will drop blue, but the difficulty is much higher for this content. Okay, let's talk about using the activity finder and the weekly quest for doing the flashpoints. If you're doing veteran mode, make sure that all the choices are selected, so your filter here should say 28 out of 28, so you qualify towards the weekly quest that rewards additional currency and an upgrade chest. If you're doing master modes, your gear is not sufficient, so if you're using activity finder, you'll have to filter it to say only hammer station, and you can also choose this if you want. This means you'll be ineligible for the weekly. I really don't actually suggest using Activity Finder at this point for master modes, as generally you won't find that it groups, but what you can do is you can manually walk in the door to any flashpoint instead of doing it through Activity Finder. This allows you to do it either solo or in a group. It gives you a lot more options for the master mode flashpoints, as you can find another player to just farm the first boss in an easy flashpoint. In general, being part of an active guild that you can group up with for content will make this process easier and much faster to complete. Okay, now it's time to be able to upgrade our piece of prototype gear for completing the quest. Note that the belts, bracers, earpieces, and relics are the cheapest to upgrade, so I highly suggest only upgrading one of these pieces to save you on time compared to the other items that you potentially get. Quick note, if you've skipped ahead to this section because you already have gear and currency, if you don't already have a piece of blue gear to upgrade, you can buy one off the Flashpoint or Operation Vendor based on which currency you have the most of. So if you already have around 350 to 400 OP-1 Catalyst, you definitely want to stick to the Operations gear and buy a piece there to upgrade. Otherwise, you can buy the Flashpoint gear and buy additional Flashpoint 1 stabilizers with your spare Conquest accommodations off of the Conquest gear vendor. If you have the 4 Anomaly Story Mode tokens, it's really simple to be able to get your gear up to item rating 330. You've simply bought your piece of 328 gear, and you'll come here and you'll find the upgrade for 1 token that converts it to 330. Now you're ready to complete the quest. Additionally, if you have any other R4 Story Mode tokens at this point, you can use them to buy accessories only, so your earpiece and your 2 relics, and upgrade those to 330 as they serve no other purpose in our gearing progress. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to obtain these 2 generic resources that we need for upgrading everything.
Would you look at that? Didn't even need the balls.
The Conquest accommodations, it's fairly simple. You're going to be mostly earning these through obtaining your personal conquest. And additionally, as you deconstruct gear, you'll be able to obtain conquest accommodations and daily resource matrix. And sometimes when you kill enemies, they'll drop a bag of loot that gives you conquest accommodations. As for a daily resource matrix, these are going to take a little bit more work and a little bit more playing. So the primary way that we're going to be getting those, if you open your activities window and look under the solo tab, the different weekly missions for the heroics will reward you with 40 daily resource matrix, and each heroic mission you complete will reward you with additional daily resource matrix. Also, daily areas such as CZ198 will reward a very generous amount of daily resource matrix, with their individual missions rewarding some more. But they aren't the only way, as you can see on the gearing graphic monstrosity that I have up here beside me now. If you have the operations gear, you're going to be obtaining that operation catalyst from completing operations. So if you can go ahead and pick yourself up the weekly mission if it's available for you, this will help you gain OP1 catalyst faster. Also, if you're getting the blue prototype gear, which drops in veteran mode, or the artifact gear, which you get from your accessories in veteran mode, you're going to be able to deconstruct those for a larger amount of currency than the green pieces that drop from bosses in story mode. Our primary source of getting these OP1 catalysts is going to be from deconstructing the gear we get when we kill bosses, although the weekly will give us a really nice boost. And at this point, once you already have your first piece of prototype gear, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You can do story mode or veteran mode. There are a couple important things to note about the weekly quest here. The first thing is you can actually repeat these quests multiple times, so you can do them up to 3 times in a single week. And the other important thing is this upgrade cash that you get, you want to save these. Do not open these. We're not going to touch these yet. You're going to thank me later. The big thing to remember here is we want to funnel all of our currencies into upgrading one piece. So don't be tempted to put on additional pieces that might look better than the gear you currently have. Just keep deconstructing all of your spare pieces except for the one that you're upgrading, so you can get those currencies as fast as possible, because we're going to unlock better gear real fast by doing it this way. Okay, if you're upgrading the Flashpoint gear, you'll be able to obtain the FP1 stabilizers from the Conquest gear vendor for your spare Conquest combinations, from deconstructing your Flashpoint boss drops, and from the weekly quest. At this point, we don't have the gear to complete the weekly quest for Master Mode Flashpoints. Depending on your preference, there are a few ways to farm this required currency. 1. Complete the veteran flashpoints via the activity finder and complete the weekly quest up to 3 times per week. Second option is to repeat easy flashpoints without the activity finder. This is a great option if you like to play solo or want to farm master mode flashpoints. We only need to kill easy bosses to get the gear drops, and we're not trying for the weekly mission. And the last final note, make sure that you're not using any of the upgrade caches that you obtain from the weekly quest, and that you're deconstructing every piece of gear except for the one that you want to be upgrading. It doesn't matter how tempting the gear is to wear, getting that currency is much more important. Okay, once you've completed the grind to get up to 330 on a single piece of prototype gear, you're going to complete the quest. Simply deconstruct this piece of gear, ensuring that you have the appropriate quest for it, and then go back to the vendor, as this will fully unlock the item mods on Zeke. So you have to talk to Hyde briefly after deconstructing the item, and then you'll be able to go to Zeke and buy these items. You can get a full set of 330 gear for weapons and armors for about 2.5 million credits. Now that we've finished the quest to be able to buy all of the item modifications, we want to get ourselves some Bound to Legacy shells if you don't have them already, so you can modify all of that gear to 330. So in the supply section of Fleet, we're going to go to the far room from all of our previous vendors. That would be kind of the middle right, just below the middle there. And then on Imperial Fleet, it would be the left side, just above the middle. So in the last room here, you're going to find the Adaptive Gear vendor. And on this vendor, for a very low amount of credits, you can buy gear. Make sure you scroll down a bit until it says Binds to Legacy instead of Bind on Pickup. You will not be able to find an offhand on this vendor that binds to Legacy. You could use your quick travel and you could go to the Cartel Bazaar down on the bottom if you're on Infleet, and you could go to the Greed vendor if you have a reputation with them and get a Bound to Legacy offhand from the Greed vendor. Otherwise, we can go back to one of my favorite rooms, the Spoil of War vendor, and we can use a few extra tech frags to be able to buy ourselves an unidentified offhand. From here, we will be taking our Bound to Legacy gear that's moddable, and we will be installing the armorings, mods, enhancements, hilts that we bought off of the Zeke vendor, so that it will turn this item into an item rating 330 piece of gear. At this time, as long as you have the credits or resources to do so, you should definitely be installing your augments. So you want to put in your augmentation kit MK-11s, and then you're going to be installing either an augment 73, 74, or if you happen to have the gold ones, you can install those. Note, augments are a huge power boost to players, and you should definitely be ensuring that you're putting in at least the augment 73s if you can afford them, because this is moddable gear. We're no longer going to be upgrading these gear pieces, so we won't lose the augmentation kit or the augments when we replace the item modifications in here, upgrading them from 330 to 336 later down the road. Now that we've finished gearing up our basic gear to 330, we're going to be wanting to work on our 336 mod vendor quest. So during this entire process, you've probably been continuing to work on obtaining your tactical, getting your legendaries, and upgrading your legendaries. But you won't really have done anything with your accessories unless you had spare R4 story mode tokens to spend. So what are we going to do? Pretty much the same process as before. We need to get ourselves a piece of prototype gear at the highest item rating possible to us, and then upgrade that to 336. So there's a few different ways that we can do this. Ideally, you want to use your bracers or your belt as they're cheaper to upgrade. Same process as before, we still want to be funneling all of our resources into upgrading one piece. If you are limited to veteran mode flashpoints for any personal reason, you'll want to upgrade your ear and 2 relics to 328 using the Conquest gear, and then open up a single upgrade cache from the veteran mode flashpoint weekly. Because all of your other gear is 330, except for those 3 pieces, it will upgrade one of them, giving you a 330 blue accessory. If you are playing solo and you don't have the weekly upgrade cache, you can still upgrade your Conquest gear as high as possible, and then wait for the game to drop you an accessory from killing those bosses in veteran mode flashpoints. Once you have your second blue piece to upgrade, just keep farming like before and funnel every piece you find into upgrading it until it's 336. Note, if going the Flashpoint route, you can spend spare Conquest combinations to get additional Flashpoint 1 stabilizers. Completing the mod 336 vendor quest, whoa, that's a mouthful. Once we get a piece of gear to 336, if it's a weapon or armor, just go ahead and deconstruct it like before, while you have the appropriate quest for prototype gear. If you upgraded an accessory to 336, you might want to try and spend some time trying to get a duplicate 336 accessory before we deconstruct it. At this point, you simply upgrade the mod gear to 336 by installing the new item modifications at 336. At this point, you can choose to work on the 336 artifact quest to get better quality 336 enhancements. These aren't required for tanks, but they do help damage and healer classes. So to do this, the only place you can do this is in operations. So you'll have to either buy an artifact quality piece off of the vendor or be doing veteran mode operations and get an accessory that's artifact quality. Okay, now that all of our weapons and armor are up to item rating 336 and we have them augmented, the remaining thing is to get your accessories up to 336. If you're fine with it, you can just upgrade your conquest gear for your accessories and have green earpiece and relics. It's not a big damage lot, it's not a huge deal, but if you're looking to get more powerful prototype or artifact accessories at 336, you may be tempted to start upgrading from scratch by buying the 324s or whatever you currently have on you, but this is very time consuming and expensive. So I suggest using a combination of upgrading your cheaper conquest accessories, using any remaining upgrade caches that we've been saving up to this point, and farming bosses to get the desired pieces at 336. Using these upgrade crates, they will upgrade the items that we have equipped that have the lowest item rating first, and if multiple items are tied to the lowest item rating, they will randomly pick one of those items and give you a boost. Now, if we are dealing with the veteran mode flashpoint crates, they will give accessories as blue quality for you, and if we're dealing with the weekly reward upgrade crate from the veteran mode operations, those will still only give you blue instead of the purple you can get from boss drops. One other thing that I wanted to go over, sorry about the white glare here, is I wanted to talk a little bit about how you're going to farm your daily resource matrix as fast as possible. I'm going to provide a couple of links in the description down below to these Google Sheets that I've created. One of them will go through each individual heroic mission to show you which one is the fastest, depending on if you're stealther, non-stealther, so on. This other one here is going to show you for the weekly missions what's the fastest way to do them. So as you can see here, Corellia on the Republic side as a stealther is the fastest daily resource matrix per minute farm, and it'll tell you which missions not to take to complete the weekly. I also do have a few other videos where I go over in video format how I go through some of these daily areas to do them quite quickly. They're kind of mixed into other videos and not standalone videos on their own, so sorry they will be a little bit harder to find, but that should help you immensely with farming your daily resource matrix much faster. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it makes gearing much easier in 7.2. Gearing is very complicated, convoluted, and unnecessarily stupid in Legacy of the Sith, but thanks to a lot of changes they've introduced over the different updates, 7.2 gearing is much faster and much easier, and probably less than 10 hours grind, maybe even less than a 6-hour grind to get all the way up to 336 on your gear. As always, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.